Hey guys, how's it going? So what am I working on now? Well, I got this '04 Chevy Silverado Duramax diesel. It's a 2500 series. And a customer's complaint is the steering gets weird and the brakes get weird. Well, what do the two have in common? Well, this thing has a hydroboost brake system. Hydroboost is, in case you didn't know, it runs off the power steering system. That's what provides the boost. So he said he was adding fluid to it. So I started looking at it, and sure enough, the hydroboost unit itself is leaking. Let me show you what we got. So here it is. Pretty simple, straightforward setup. Now this unit down here, sorry for the way the light is, but I can't really help that. This is the hydroboost unit that the master cylinder is bolted to. See this back here? You got the power steering lines and stuff going to it. And when it's running, and the power steering is active, that's what gives you the brake boost. Now it does have an accumulator over here, that cylinder there. That accumulator allows you, in case the motor shuts off, to have some braking ability for a little while. You never lose braking, but you lose the assist. And if any of you know, if you tried driving a car with no brake assist on a car that's supposed to have it, sometimes it's quite difficult to stop. So this thing is actually leaking from the unit itself. It's all soaking wet down here. The lighting may not be that great for me to show you, but if you look down there, I don't know if I can cover up some of the light, but you see it's all soaking wet from the hydroboost unit itself. So we're going to be changing it. And right here, I have the replacement unit. Now the accumulator on this can be charged. You don't touch it though, leave it alone, it's already pre-charged. And but I'm going to show you what's involved, because I got to change it over. And if you look closely, if you see that plate towards the back there, see that grayish colored plate that thing is bolted to? I got to change that over to mount it to this hydroboost assembly. So let me start by unbolting the master. You don't have to take the master completely out, but you can unbolt it and slide the thing forward. This way you don't have to break open, or crack open brake lines, I should say. So let's get going with that, and let's see where this ends up. And pretty simply, you're just going to unbolt the master. I had to crack them free, the two nuts, with an actual wrench, because they were on there, let me tell you. So now those are out. And then the master, you're just going to pull out. But if you look inside there, you can see it's soaking wet. And that's not brake fluid, that is actually power steering fluid. Because this end of it's power steering fluid, this end of it's brake fluid. Never, and I mean never, ever put power steering fluid in the brake system. You will destroy everything inside the brake system. Always make sure you use brake fluid, whatever it calls for, make sure you use that. On this it's .3, make sure you use .3. Never mix anything else in there. It will destroy everything in the system. Yeah, so let me continue with this. Let me get this completely moved out of the way, and we're going to go from there. Now the next step with this thing being loose is we got to take the power steering hoses off that go to it. I got this one return here, and we got these two pressures. I'm not exactly sure how they work. In other words, I know one's a pressure in. Is it a pressure in, pressure out? Maybe that's how it works. And then this is just a return, like a bleed off return. But yeah, so we just got to get these hoses off. Not a big deal. Those are 18 millimeter, and you want to use a line wrench. That's a line wrench. This is the type of tool you want to use on those. And the reason you want to use this is because if you don't use something like this, you could round those out. They're very easy to round out. It's a softer metal than, like, say, a regular grade 8 bolt or whatever. So let's go get these lines off of here. And you're going to lose fluid. You're going to make a mess. It's to be expected. You know, there's nothing you're going to do about it, but just take the lines off, put them to the side. I miscued slightly. This one's an 18, this one's a 5/8. So once you get them loose, once you get that nut cracked free, then you can go to the open end. And if you look, the open end on this is much thicker than it would be if it was a regular open end wrench. And the reason for that is because they try to keep it so that the jaw doesn't spread open like it can on a regular wrench. So do that, get these out. So we'll get these out, and then we're going to go to the inside of the car and show you what you got to take off on the inside. One thing of note too, once the lines are off like that, if you look closely, they use an O-ring on that line. See where it's dripping? There's an O-ring there. Same on the other line there. That's got an O-ring on it. See it? So make sure you replace the O-rings with the new ones that should be in the kit that come with the new booster. If they're not in the kit, get a set of new ones, because you're going to save yourself from some aggravation, because you're going to wind up with a leak. So let's go ahead and let's see what we have to do underneath the dash, that is. There's a clip that holds this whole thing together underneath there. I may not be able to show you that thing. That thing's a pain, but once I get it out, I can explain it to you. But let's see how this goes. Now, up under the dash, I pull the lower trim panel off. Technically, you don't have to. It's right there. You don't have to, because you do have enough room. The reason I take it off is because it gives me a little more light underneath here, because it's kind of dark and dingy and dirty and everything else. I like to see what I'm doing. Anyway, there you see the brake rod up there, and there's a clip on there that's just a real pain to get to. But if you look, you can see the 4 nuts that hold everything in place. So what I got to do first is I got to get that clip off, which I don't even know if I can get on it for you to see it, but the brake switch goes to it and everything else. I got to get all of that off, and then I'm going to take those 4 15mm nuts off, and then that whole assembly is going to come out underneath the hood. So let me start getting that clip off, and maybe I can show you what that looks like. All right, so here's the clip. And if you look closely, what happens is the brake pedal itself has almost like a nail head pin on it. The nail head goes through the big hole here, and it pushes on that tab. Once you get it pushed in far enough, you slide this into the groove, the receiving groove on the actual pedal. And once this thing goes over, it'll eventually snap into place. This is the worst part of the job, is getting this thing off. These things are absolutely terrible to get off. But anyway, got it off. I took the brake light switch out, because once you undo everything and you leave the brake light switch just hanging, the brake lights stay on. And right about now, it's almost lunchtime, so I don't want to leave this thing just sitting with the brake lights on. Another thing too is I push the parking brake pedal all the way down, because it just makes my life easier. I'm a big guy, trying to get up underneath the dash sometimes was a real pain. So now that everything's unbolted, this thing should come out. Like I said, that whole plate and everything else is going to come out. Oh, one thing I did notice, I don't know if you could see it. If you look at this hose is almost collapsed. See that? Now, it's not a problem with the hose. Usually, when you have a hose that's collapsed, when the engine's cold, if you come outside and you find that your hose is collapsed, usually it's a bad radiator cap. So, just something to keep in mind. So now, this booster should come out. I may not be able to do this one-handed, though. So, the studs that come through the firewall there, they may be stuck in the hole. Sometimes that happens. So let me see if I can't wiggle this thing out and get it out. There we go. Now it's coming out. Now, that red stuff on there, that's double-sided tape. That's not supposed to be there. Somebody added that to it. This thing might have had a water leak or something at one point. Well, why would you do that and leave the red seal part, or the red part of the tape on there? That just makes no sense. So, all right, let's get this off here. So now with that out of the way, on the back side here, because you're going to transfer over this plate, got to take this clip out right there. And let's see if I got the right size. Actually, hold on one second. All right, so I got snap ring pliers in there. You want to take that snap ring out, and then don't lose it. The new one didn't come with one, so then you got to get this gigantic nut off of here. It happens to be a what size is this? Hold on. It's an 1 7/8 open end that I can fit on there. I don't have a socket that'll fit that thing. But if you don't have anything that'll fit it, a lot of times a hammer and chisel will knock that thing off. They do give you a new one with the new hydroboost unit. So let me see if I can't get this off. Now, a lot of times with a wrench this size, I mean, that's a big wrench. A wrench this size, trying to get it in there to actually get a spot where you can manipulate it is kind of tough, because see, you're already up against the studs. So let me see what I can do here, what I can figure out. I may have to take a hammer and chisel to it, but then I would tighten it up with this. Sometimes too, taking the studs out works, but the problem is they're a pressed in stud. See that? I kind of don't want to knock one out and then have to worry about it when I'm assembling it again. So let me see if I can't get this off. All right, so I did in fact have to chisel this one. I could not get it to break free. So as you can see right there, chisel marks. So there it is coming off. Really no big deal. And as you can see, this thing has like a one-way key, or a keyway I should say, on it. What I need to do is I need to polish this up just a little bit. I'll take one of my scrubby wheels and just mow that little ridge down a little bit, just get it smooth. And this nut, if you look, it's actually got these pretty sharp edges here that lock it in place, and then it has that clip that goes on as for like redundancy to keep it from falling off. God forbid the nut ever loosens up. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap places, put the new one in here. Be careful when you go to anything in a vise, this way you don't destroy what you're holding, because I've seen people, you know, you'll put it on the pipe here or whatever and you destroy stuff. So just be mindful of that. So let me clean that up. Let me get the new one in there. Let me get that all mounted up this way I can put everything back together. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is you have to take the push rod out and the spring plate or whatever that's in here. Let me show you real quick. This piece down inside here, you have to get this out. See this? Now, it could be a little bit of a pain. Of course, I don't have my handy dandy little tripod readily available. But let me see if I can't go grab it, because this is going to be a little bit of a pain. But you understand what I got to do. You kind of have to tip it in. I'm trying to do this one hand, it's a pain. And get the edge to come over. And then once you do that, you kind of like walk it out. There is a spring behind it. It's not super powerful, but you want to pay attention so you don't let the thing blow out and go all over the place. It's not like it's going to kill you like a strut spring, but you know, you don't want to lose that little retainer plate there either. So I'm working it around, and I'm like right at that edge. Oop, there it goes. Now you do got to be careful. This, like I said, it can shoot out and you could lose this thing. You don't want to do that. So, I mean, if worst comes to worst, maybe if you put something across it, but even then that's just a pain. Just be mindful of it. That's the best way to avoid losing it. But you're going to take these two pieces out, and then you're going to take that push rod out. And as you can see, it's full of fluid in there. That's power steering fluid. That's not brake fluid. So let's get all of this switched over, and we'll get that nut tightened up, and then we should be good to go for reinstallation. All right, there we go. The piston's in place, or rather the push rod. The plate's locked down. I actually did have to hit that with a chisel too to lock that down in place. So now, gonna go back together. Reverse procedure to install. So there we go. Everything's all installed. Lines are on. New O-rings are in place. Everything's on there. I topped off the power steering fluid. Now I'm going to start it up. You don't have to bleed the brakes or anything because you didn't disturb it. You didn't touch any of the brake lines, so you don't have to worry about air being in the system. So let's start this thing up. Probably gonna have to add fluid to it. I'm gonna push some air out. So what I'm gonna do is cut the wheels a little bit, hit the brakes a few times. This way I make sure we push out any air that might be in the system. Anytime you do work like this too, have somebody verify that your brake lights are working the way they're supposed to. Or if you don't have somebody to help you verify, just make sure you look at it. Obviously make sure you don't have brake lights when your foot's off of it, and make sure you have brake lights when you press down on it, that's all. If you gotta prop something in between, whatever, just verify your brake lights work. So let's just double check the fluid level, and then we're gonna go for a road test. All right, guys, so I just went on a road test. Everything was fine, very uneventful. Brakes worked fine, steering works fine, so there's no issues there. Really no point in even filming it because, like I said, it was very uneventful. So anyway, yeah, everything seems fine. You know, all the air bled out of the power steering system, and yeah, I think we're all good. So hopefully you got something out of that video. If you did, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.